Check, 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 check. Hello. Check, check. 1, 2, check, check, 3, 4. Check, check, check. Yo, what's up, Sprung Bean? I see you. What up, dude? Yo. Yo. How you doing? All right, 1 second. Yo, what up? I'm Brand Meme. Good to see you. I'm Brand Meme. What up, dude? It's good to see ya. Welcome into the swamp. Good to have you on the lily pad here in the ASMR stream. It's good to hear your voice. Welcome to the ASMR stream. I'm your host. Red Poppy. Hi. Hello. What's up? Good to have you in. Hello, everybody. How are you today? Hi. How's it going? It's your boy. Broski stepped up his live streams. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I have this thing going on now. I've got an Electro Voice RE20, very comparable to the other microphone I got here, the Shure SM7B. The Shure SM7B. Yeah. Blessed with your presence. Yo, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, what can I say? It has been quite some time. It's been a good long while, but we're here, and we're here to read the room. We're here to read the room. Do you remember me? Of course I remember you. Sprung Bing, you're like one of 3 people that come in pretty regularly and watch. So I definitely recommend. I definitely remember. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Uh-huh. All right, what am I drinking tonight? Tonight I'm drinking the golden oolong tea. Speaking of red, golden oolong tea, my favorite shade of red. I'm getting Eric's face tattooed on me. That's funny. I would love to see that, actually. Me personally, I don't have any tattoos. I don't do the tattoo thing, but if I did do tattoos, yeah, I would also have your face tattooed on me. We would trade tattoos together. We would tattoo each other, actually. I would tattoo my face personally onto you, and it would be like a smiley face. I should too. Yeah, let's all 3 get tattoos. That would lock us. Yeah, that would lock us in for life. Yo, Locktober is over. And by that I mean, like, we were locked up. We were locked in a booth, and we didn't leave until we created something. So, literally, earlier today, I was doing some work. I was sitting on the bench. All right, let's see what we got. I did not update my screens, so they might look bad. There we go. Got these. Usually I update these before I start, but I did not do that here because y'all were too quick. Y'all were so quick. So where were we? Well, I just submitted the 15-minute checkpoint for the Wealth Almanac. So, historical insights for contemporary fortune. That, by Mr. Michael Kelly, was just submitted today. So I did do that. And we made doing our promise. Look at this. It's due November 2nd. It is currently November 2nd. So here we go. Here we have it. here we have it. So we actually made due on a promise here tonight. That was super cool. I, for some reason, was thinking that it was due on the 3rd. And so I was like, oh, I'll over-deliver. I literally just delivered. Instead of over-delivering, I'm just delivering. So call me the OBGYN, because ya boy's delivering. It's not DiGiorno. It's not DiGiorno. It's delivery, baby. Come on. All right, sales for the last month. What do we got? Last month, quarter to date, last month, 24. So check that out. We had one sale on Halloween. Love to see it. So it's basically one sale since the 24th. So we got 24 days. 24 days of sales. That's pretty good. I love that. Comparing that to the month previous, I think we had like 28 or something. I don't know. I lose track. 25. So we're right on. Wait, what's funnier than 24? 25. Yeah, so we got 25. Dang, we started strong with 3. 2 instances of 3. That's probably what put us over there. But yeah, just happy to see it. Looks like we already have 2 listeners for this month. Love to see it. And, just looking for the day that we just don't have any pockets of 0. I'm just happy people are listening. Why haven't you streamed in like a month? I have not streamed in that long because what was I doing? Well, I usually have a excuse. Yesterday I did stream. However, I streamed very late. And then I think the day before that I streamed. Maybe. Yeah, I think that's how it worked. Or maybe it was a few days ago. But I haven't streamed in quite some time because I was doing a few things. So I have this setup now. I've got like this little desk. I got this little desk here, so that sort of helps out. I got this new microphone, the Electro Voice RE20. And usually for most people it would take them like a day to set up. It took me quite some time to get out of the loop, and then I fell into a void of I don't know. Sometimes I dissociate for a little bit and lose all sense of oneness with the universe and become an individual. And I fully immerse myself in my role as a chemist, and I just do that for like 100 hours in 2 weeks. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, life is bigger than this. And then I find my way back to you guys. Welcome back. Hello. Good to have you. Good to see you. Good to be seen. Also, by the way, gotta give my thanks to... Thank you so much, Razzo010. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate you, my man. Thank you for the follow. Well, I'm happy you're back. Thank you so much, Sprung Bing. I appreciate that. Yeah, so we are back and ready to attack in the form of audiobook, snapbacks and tattoos. Oh, what else was I doing? I was actually doing some stuff. I was in a movie. I was in a couple movies recently. I don't know how loud I can be about everything, but where were we? Camera. Let's see. So I was in a movie called Summer 2001. So I was working background for that. Played a relatively small part. I was just one of the people at a party. So if you see Eliza Schlesinger's new movie, Summer 2001, I think it's coming out maybe in a few months, maybe in 6 months, something like that. The timeline on those film projects are pretty far out, but I should be in one of the pool scenes on that film. Should be coming out on Netflix. So I'll be doing that. You could spot me in that film. Outside of that, there's another film called Jacob Beats Up Nate. Don't Kick Me Off, TOS. But Jacob Beats Up Nate, I will be in that film as well, also as a background. I just worked that actually on Halloween, so that one's going to be a little further out. And I don't know actually where it's going to be broadly posted, but I know it's going to be in one of the St. Louis film festivals. So it's going to be in a film festival. That'll be super neat. Can't wait to be in there. I said one line. I said no. So this guy looks back at me. Actually, it was kind of cool because I was on set for the role that I auditioned for. One of the roles I auditioned for was young prospect. It was a boxing prospect that is in the ring and he's trying to get film for his YouTube or whatever. And he basically just like he's sparring up with a guy, right, throwing some jabs and stuff, and like he's getting coached, and he has one of his friends filming, and he gets hit, and he's like, "Oh, come on, man, I can't use that. Can I use that? I can't use that." Right? And it goes into that thing. And I'm actually the guy in that film that's being spoken to. So it's kind of cool because I didn't get that part, but I got to interact with the guy that got that part. So really neat how that works. And funny enough, the same thing happened on Summer 2001. I was like in the same scene, and I watched the scene happen from a distance. I watched the scene happen that I auditioned for. I was auditioning for Jay for that one. So they had some really good talent playing both of those parts. So I obviously was just watching how they performed, how they got ready for the performance, how they were interacting with the people, differentiating it from the way I would approach it, stuff like that. So I was doing some internal work while I was watching their performance and how the people that were chosen approached it in their own unique ways. And honestly, I thought that I played the part probably way louder than maybe what they were looking for, because this person was a lot more like toned back and relaxed with this performance. A lot of the times you could think, oh, it wasn't acting enough. Like, no, it's not that at all. And in fact, it's the opposite. If you're too expressive, a lot of the times people don't want to see that on camera. It's not as realistic. So I took that note and said, okay, maybe next time, dial it back a bit. So that's what I've been doing. What else? Well, it's between that and work and yeah, that's about it. That's what I've been up to. What you been up to? What are you doing? I saw a couple different updates for Streamlabs. A couple of different things. For one, you can go live on TikTok, which is pretty neat. I've been at school. Nice. There we go. Love to see that. Stay in school. What else? Streamlabs has been pretty nice, though. Like, apparently you can go live on TikTok. I went live on TikTok and tried that out successfully. So that happened. Oh, my gosh. That's crazy, dude. That's crazy. I forgot how young you were. Definitely stay in school. Yeah, it's but check it out when it hits Netflix, or when it hits I don't know where the feature film's going to be at. It could be in theaters, honestly. So be on the lookout for that. It features Mr. Justin Long, the gentleman from Jeepers Creepers 2001. He's huge. I think I've seen him once on set, but it was hard to make out because he was in a hat. So I think he was watching us getting coached for a little bit, and then he left. But I did not say hi. I did interact with Eliza on set, which was super neat. We did a scene where I was playing Flippy Cup, so hope they use that. I'm playing Flippy Cup with Eliza Schlesinger. If there was ever a bucket list, that's one of them. That was incredible. I love that. Dude, and she's so chill, too. Like, literally, she was walking by on set, and she was coming from Lola Tongue. So, if you guys know Lola Tongue, she's in this really popular movie, The Summer I Turned Pretty. I was on set with her as well, but I don't know her that much, so I don't really speak about her, but I think that she's really like doing a lot right now. But she's like walking from Lola Tongue's trailer, and they're both walking back to the car, and I'm like starstruck. I'm like, holy shit, that's her. That's incredible. That's Eliza Schlesinger. And she's walking by. I'm like, that's amazing. And then we get on set, and she's just like big chilling on set, and I'm like, oh my god, that's her. And then like throughout the night, it just wears off into like a, oh hey, there she is. Like it's just so casual. So I thought that was really interesting. I've never had that happen just yet. So I'm sure it happens all the time in LA, but that's the first time for me. So that was really neat. Thank you. Shout out to Eliza for making her way to Missouri. Missouri loves you. Missouri loves you. Missouri loves company. Could have been our motto, but we chose not. We chose show me state. What does that mean? What does that mean? Is this like we're showing? What are we showing? Showing our cards? We don't even allow gambling in the state. Yo, check it out. I'm going to put my drink over there. All right. So let's get down to business. What are we doing tonight? What are we reading, guys? What are we reading? Shwip. What are we reading from my Appalachia, apple bottom genotype? Yeah, buddy. All right. Let's see. I'm going to pull up. I really want to continue with Wealth Almanac, which is funny. Cuz I was finalizing the first 15 minutes, and I think I want to just like continue with this chapter until I'm over that chapter and then go into the next project. Yo, what's up, Sprung Bean? I'm going to go to bed. Yo, you deserve some sleep, my man. Thank you so much for popping in. Thanks for showing some love. Sprung Bean, my man, welcome in, and have a good night. Have a good night. I hope you have a wonderful evening and a great night's sleep and a good day at school tomorrow. I can't hear you. Oh. Well, have a good night. Is this, it should be playing. Let me double check. Wait, never mind. All right. I was going to say, wait a minute. Hold up. Let me double check my YouTube anyway. See how I look. How do I look? How do I look on YouTube? There we go. All right, that's not bad. I like it. Yeah, maybe I'll share my YouTube on Threads. Maybe that'll cause a stir. Maybe that'll cause a stir. Who knows? We'll see. All right. There we go. Have a great night. Hey, have a wonderful evening. Thanks so much for popping in. Thanks so much for popping in. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, okay. Bam, bam, bam. Recording. There we go. All right. Yeah, I was testing my microphone actually, because what I can do is let's go into Logic Pro. So, like, this top one is going to be input one. So, that's going to be the microphone that's right in front of me. But this bottom one is actually the Shure SM7B. So, I can, like, go down here and talk into it and talking to this one specifically. And that volume is way up because I'm speaking into that microphone instead. So, I kind of had this concept where I could take the best of both worlds and I could run like a high pass filter on one of these and just get the low end with like the Shure SM7B and then run a low pass filter on the Electro Voice and get all of the high end stuff as well. But I tested both microphones and here I'll sort of play what I heard, and we'll see if you hear the same thing. Sure. Electro Voice. Sure. Electro Voice. In all honesty, I kind of feel like I'm going to stick with this one for a little bit. I feel like I'm going to stick with this one for a little bit because It could just be the cables that are associated with this, because it's really an unfair comparison. At the current moment, this is hooked up to a professional OFC microphone from Sweetwater. They do a really good job of keeping things as professional as possible. The Shure SM7B, by contrast, is connected to an Amazon Basics XLR cable, which is low noise, but it's not OFC. And OFC stands for oxygen-free copper, which prevents a lot of the aberrations and abnormalities that we may or may not be seeing. So I think a lot of the artifacts that we've seen may be a result of this XLR cable, and I want to test that theory by getting a different cable hooked up to this and see if that will actually improve this. I think the OFC is a really good addition to that, because if you recall, we did have a couple different clips that were totally killed by like a cell signal coming in. And I can't help that because I'm using my phone as my camera. It's turned the other way, and it's broadcasting to my laptop. So I can't really get away from having a cell phone in here, and all of my devices accept cell service. So can't get away from that. Can't get away from the generation of electronic energy. But I know that this is made with oxygen-free copper, and oxygen-free copper won't react in that same way like we saw with the cell phone. So I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say that it's probably the cable, because this is a really nice microphone. But we'll see. We'll see. So in lieu of that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to disconnect my input 2. So I'm going to bring this back to a mono, input 1, take it off, input 2, and then I'm about to disconnect it. So if we get disconnected, that's what's going on. I'm going to put it on a different channel. Actually, I can't put it on a different channel. So what I'll do is I'll actually save this, and I will... Oh, these are actually the same. So it's probably just taken from one. It's probably just taken from one. So I'm going to trust that and unplug it. Okay, there we go. Yeah, as you can see, this is Amazon Basics. So, actually, let me go back to the camera. So this is Amazon Basics. This is what we're dealing with right here. Amazon Basics. And that is not your top-of-the-line cable. It will do for a moment, but it won't do forever. And I've had this microphone for... since let's see, I kind of went through it after a breakup in 2021, I would say 2021. And I started saying, you know what? I'm just going to chase my dreams. I don't give a shit anymore. And that's what I got. So I got this very expensive microphone that I couldn't afford at the time, but I paid it off over time. And here we have it. Now we have a second. But yeah, it's a few years old. So let's see, 2025 from 21. That's about 4 years. That's about 4 years old. I think it's probably time for a new cable. This thing's not that pricey. So lo and behold, things happen. Things wear out. And I think that cable is the weak spot. So let's go to the recording scene. And we should be back to just one. But I'll save this, and then I'll open the... Actually, this is the one I was recording out of. So I'm probably just gonna continue recording out of here. Chapter 1, and then we'll add another. Thank you, sir. Can I have another? Unmute that. Check 1 2. Check 3 4. All right, so I can hear myself. Can you guys hear me though? That's the question. Let me zoom down. Check. Looks like you guys can't. Looks like Logic Pro is off. Let me double check that by going to YouTube and making sure you can't hear me. You can't hear me. Let's see. Okay. All right. So that is correct. Correct. All right. What if I bring that down to mono? What does that do? Does nothing. Okay. I remember where I was because it's still on that page. Look at that. The magic of movies. Movie magic. Wouldn't you know it? I know I'm going to hit that. There we go. Cool. I am completely devoid of moisture. My lips are becoming chapped AF. Right now, they are chapped as fuck. I need a wet sauna. Wet ass sauna. Sauna. I said sauna. All right. Let's mute that. Everything else is muted. We're going to start. Oh, you know what? That's bad form. Sorry about that. Put that up there. There we go. All right, actually, let me make sure you can hear this. Ew. You could definitely hear that. I heard too much. By 1942, a significant part of the United States industrial might. By 1942, a significant part of the United States industrial might was converted to the production of armaments. And war materials. Automakers were encouraged to produce aircraft. Shipbuilding increased dramatically, as did the production of munitions. Military services were allowed enormous control over industry. Military service were allowed enormous control over industry. Industry, in turn, learned that significant money could be made by servicing the war machine. Scientific and technological expansion, particularly in the aerospace industry, jumped rapidly ahead. creating entirely new industries. The jump in industry and the jobs created put an end to the Great Depression. The Office of War Mobilization. The Office of War Mobilization took over the administration of the war in 1943. Mobilizing the United States to war was a Herculean task. Involving a number of agencies Mobilizing the United States to war was a Herculean task involving a number of agencies controlling everything from prices to control inflation to labor to drafting to food production. Not all their efforts were successful, but some, such as the sale of war bonds, were extremely effective. Though prices were fixed, wages continued to rise. Incomes rose for almost all Americans, regardless of sex or race, and rose particularly well in the manufacturing sector. So, generally, the United States national standard of living remained about equal, or at least did not decline dramatically. The gross national product of the United States grew from $88.6 billion in 1939, while the Great Depression still held sway, to $135 billion in 1944. The American economy during World War II. Employment changed dramatically as the workplace expanded parallel to the expansion of industry. Employment changed dramatically as the workplace expanded parallel to the expansion of industry. The unemployment rate was at a record low point of 1.2 of 1.2%. Women and people of color were hired into jobs for which they have not been considered before, not just in the industrial sectors, but in civilian sectors of the executive branch of the government. After 1945, although many Americans feared that moving back to post-war productions would reignite the economic depression. Let me try that one more time. After 1945, although many Americans feared that moving back to post-war productions would reignite economic depression, The GDP continued to grow after the war. The GDP continued to grow after the war. The world moved from an active hot war and quickly towards a Cold War with the Soviet Union. With the Soviet Union on one side and the United States on the other. With the Soviet Union on one side and the United States on the other. This Cold War spurned an active defensive policy, which, in turn, pulled from an industry just as it had, during the World War. During World War II. The military-industrial complex would carry on through the Cold War until today. The GI Bill sparked a demand for suburban housing, higher education, and luxuries like personal automobiles by advanced service members returning from war. World War II not only ended the Great Depression, but resulted in favorable conditions for cooperation between the federal government and privately owned enterprises. Physically, the United States had been virtually untouched by war damages and was dramatically strengthened economically by its wartime expansion. It therefore enjoyed significant advantage over both the Axis and Allied powers overseas, and gave the United States an advantage of taking a major role in the setup of the rest of the world's economy. And gave the United States the advantage of taking a major role in the setup of the rest of the world's economy. The United States was in a position to dominate the global economy for the next quarter century. The post-war, the U.S. economic boom of 1945 to 1960. The 15 years following World War II saw unprecedented economic. The 15 years following World War II saw unprecedented economic growth. In the United States and created an enormous middle class that moved from cities to the suburbs, that moved from cities to the suburbs. There were major contributors. There were major contributors to the booming economy. A housing boom was created by returning servicemen. The automobile industry quadrupled in production. Defense spending rose as a result of the Cold War. A wave of mergers occurred between huge corporations. Small franchise operations, such as fast food chain restaurants, became extremely became extremely successful. New highway new highways added 60 New highways added 64,000 miles of roads to link all areas of the country. Television became not only a new area of production, but a new way of selling, showing Americans a variety of products that could contribute to their good life. The United States gross national product rose 150% from 1945 to 1960. This was also the era of the baby boom. A remarkably important factor in the economy. Which we will examine more carefully in Chapter 2 when we discuss the impact of population decline. A country's economy thrives on spending. When there are more people available to spend and work, the economy improves, and all the benefits of a thriving economy seem to derive from this very basic factor. The post-war economy, 1945. The post-war economy, 1945 to 1960. The 1960s. Times are changing. The 1960s. Times are changing. When the 1960s arrived, a new era came. The new era came with significant changes worldwide. Many economies that had been devastated by World War II had recovered, in part due to United States programs such as the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. The changes of the long occupation and rebuilding efforts in Japan were even more profound, as many Japanese believed that Emperor Hirohito was a living god and had the divine right to rule Japan during World War II. Europe and Japan in the 1960s could now compete with the United States in the burgeoning global economy. Beyond military power, economic power became recognized as another way to establish dominance. President John F. Kennedy pushed the United States to action, challenging citizens to rise to meet a new age. Through the development of the Peace Corps, Americans helping underprivileged communities, and the prospect of space exploration, he encouraged the country to expand its ideas. In effect, to rise from the to rise the protective complacency to rise from the to rise from the protective complacency of the 19 to rise from the protective complacency of the 1950s of the 1950s. President Lyndon Johnson increased federal spending dramatically, launching programs like Medicare, food stamps, and student loan grant initiatives. And student loan/grant initiatives. Military spending increased as the Cold War prompted the United States to remain at par with or exceed the Soviet Union in technology. And the country's presence in Vietnam required significant spending. In the short term, increased spending both socially and militarily increased the strength of the United States' prosperity. But by the end of the 1960s, since the government had neglected to raise taxes sufficiently to meet these demands, inflation began to accelerate. I think that was pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. I felt like I was on a roll there. Felt like I was kind of on it. I was in the pocket. Felt like I was in the Polly Pocket. I gotta be careful with this because I know if I drink too much, I'm gonna be obviously needing to take many breaks. But also the effect of my like weird sounds with my mouth, just don't like it. I know this is ASMR stream on Twitch, but can't be. Oh man. Okay. All right, that was needed. I felt like that was needed. The end of the gold standard under President Nixon. The gold standard has a rather complex history, so suffice to say that by 1960, the United States possessed such a large share of the world's gold that other countries had simply started measuring their currency compared to the US dollar. rather than an amount of gold because the US dollar had become the de facto world currency. The de facto world currency, Amadeo. But by the 1970s, the United States gold stockpile was declining as double-digit inflation reduced the value of the dollar. Reduced the value of the dollar. Foreign banks began to redeem their US dollar holdings for gold until the United States gold supply could no longer meet the demand. President Nixon therefore changed the dollar to gold relationship by no longer allowing the dollars to be redeemed in gold. By no longer allowing the dollars to be redeemed in gold. The value of the dollar was completely decoupled from the value of gold. The value of the dollar was completely decoupled from the value of gold by 1976. When the gold standard was dropped, countries began to create more of their own currency. This resulted both in inflation and in economic growth. Though a gold standard is not considered compatible with modern economics, namely because a country's economy becomes dependent on its gold supply. The lack of a gold standard almost inevitably causes inflation. If more and more money is put into circulation, the value of that money will invariably drop. Nixon in China. President Nixon visited the People's Republic of China in 1972 to gain leverage in U.S. relationship with the Soviet Union. This not only drove a wedge between China and the Soviet Union, but also led to significant Soviet concessions to the United States. Wikipedia contributors 1972 visit by Richard Nixon to China. However, his visit also opened China to the world, allowing it to trade with capitalist countries. Opening the doorway for China to become an economic power. By 1978, China was enacting economic reforms it desperately needed following the death of Mao Zedong. As its economy failed, Wikipedia contributors, Chinese economic reform. The Chinese government made core changes to their the Chinese government made core changes to their economy, including in the late 1970s and early 1980s, by decollectivizing agriculture. Opening the country to foreign investment, and allowing entrepreneurs to start businesses. Businesses had been completely state-owned. In the 1980s and 1990s, changes included further privatization of industry and the lifting of some centralized price controls. And the lifting of some centralized price controls. By 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization, and by 2010, China had replaced Japan as the world's second largest economy. Overall, from 1978 until 2013, China's economy increased by 9.5% each year. We will further discuss the dominance of China in the global economy in the following chapter, exploring the ways in which the United States has relinquished its economic power. The 1970s, mistrust and inflation. In 1973 to 74, OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, enacted a worldwide oil embargo. In doing so, OPEC caused oil prices to skyrocket. While supply was minimalized, resulting in shortages. While supply was minimalized, resulting in shortages. Moffat, the U.S. economy of the 1960s and 1970s. Prices did not stabilize following the embargo. So inflation continued. One profound impact of the embargo was a rising number of unemployed people worldwide, especially in the United States. Amidst a series of upsetting political dramas, the resignation of Nixon and the seizing of U.S. hostages, in Tehran, everyday Americans lost faith in the United States. Everyday Americans lost faith in the Everyday Americans lost faith in in the government's ability to exert control. In the government's ability to exert control. Meanwhile, cheaper and better imported goods began to flood the market, increasing America's trade deficit. All right, I'm sure this is going to keep going. It's just going to keep going. So I'm going to look at 1980s, 1990s, Glass-Steagall Act is repealed, 2000s, the United States ballot, 2010s, 2021, then chapter 2. Okay. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 more pages. Okay. I think we can do that. That makes sense. Okay. All right. I just had to see if that was still working. Sorry. All right. I feel like I should make my guy a little bit bigger. Hold up, sorry. Delete that. We go to Streamlabs. We go to my guy. And here we go. Can I make the whole thing? Bigger? Haha, I can. Haha, nice. I want to make my guy like that big. There we go. Nice. That's pretty good. I like it. I think it needs to be up a little bit, but I like it for the most part. All right, that's on for now, but it'll probably turn off in like literally half a second. All right, let's get to reading. The 1980s trickle-down economics and the rise of the Federal Reserve. In the early 1980s, the early 1980s were The early 1980s were characterized by a deep recession after the disruptive economic events of the 1970s. But by 1983, there was recovery followed by a period of positive growth. There was a recovery followed by a period of positive growth. What brought this about? President Ronald Reagan lowered the tax rate. President Ronald Reagan lowered tax rates so that people could keep and spend. President Ronald Reagan lowered tax rates so that people could keep and spend more of their money. Although these tax cuts generally benefited wealthy earners. They caused an overall increase in jobs and better wages. Reagan also pushed for huge budgetary increases in military spending. Reagan also pushed for huge budgetary increases in military spending. I like that. Let me read that again. Reagan also pushed for huge budgetary increases in military spending. These factors, combined with lower taxes, led to a huge budget deficit. By the end of the 1980s. Of the 1980s, more than triple the budget deficit. More than triple the budget deficit in 1980. MoFat. The Federal Reserve acted by controlling the Federal Reserve acted by controlling price increases and raising interest rates whenever inflation was a threat. The Federal Reserve effectively kept the inflation rates under control throughout the decade. And some would argue that the Federal Reserve started exerting more control over the economy than the President or Congress. The 1990s, recession and recovery. By July of 1990, the economy had fallen once more into recession. President George H.W. Bush increased taxes, but the budget deficit continued to rise. Even when the recession ended, it was termed a jobless recovery. As unemployment remained stagnant. This stagnation, plus the entry of Ross Perot into the presidential race, resulted in the election of President Bill Clinton, who increased taxes on corporations and high-income Americans. This era also saw a decrease in spending cuts and the enactment of the North American Free Trade Association, NAFTA, which promised a free trade zone between Canada, United States, and Mexico to stimulate trade within North America. Rude votes. Welfare was reformed, minimum wage was increased, and Vice President Al Gore contributed to the rollback of business regulations, which allowed greater flexibility for the private economy. The Federal Reserve under Alan Greenspan continued to manage interest rates to calibrate the economy. Largely in the 1980s, America was at peace with America was at peace with a prosperous economy. America was at peace with a prosperous economy. Though economic growth was relatively slow compared to economic booms in past decades. The 1990s were also an age of transformation as new technologies, the cell phone, personal computer, and the World Wide Web resulted in great economic expansion. This caused a dramatic increase in the stock market temporarily. The Glass-Steagall Act is repealed. In 1999, President Bill Clinton repealed the Glass-Steagall Act. In 1999, President Clinton repealed the Glass-Steagall Act in President Clinton repealed the Glass-Steagall Act in the Gramm-Leach Bliley Act, believing it would increase the stability of financial systems by permitting diversification in their products and services. Note, the Glass-Steagall Act had been enacted in 1932 and separated commercial and investment banking. Wikipedia contributors, Glass-Steagall legislation. This meant that securities firms and investment banks could not take deposits and kept commercial banks from investing in non-governmental securities, among other actions. Essentially, a single company had to choose between being a bank or a securities firm prior to the rescinding of the Glass-Steagall Act. The Glass-Steagall Act had been transformed. And reinterpreted many times. But it was President Clinton who finally eliminated the act. Banks and securities firms were no longer restricted. The effect of repealing this act is still unclear. Some cast major blame for its contribution to the financial crisis of 2007 to 2008, while others say that the activities leading to that financial crisis were not regulated by the Glass-Steagall Act. 2000s, lost decades in Japan. Lost decades in Japan. An economic powerhouse in the second half an economic powerhouse in the second half of the 20th century. Japan ran headlong into economic stagnation when a speculative asset price bubble burst in 1991. Wikipedia contributors lost decades. The Bank of Japan primarily lent exorbitant amounts of money without considering the reliability of the borrowers, resulting in the massive inflation of the bubble economy. Then, in an attempt to cover the overlending in check, the Bank of Japan sharply increased its interest rates in 1989. This was all it took for the bubble to burst, leading to a nationwide realization of bad debt, resulting in many government bailouts to keep banks from failing. At first, the lost decade of Japan was only considered to be from 1991 through 2001, but meager gains in the country's GDP have caused the past 3 decades to be included. And now Japan is known for lost decades. Without further catastrophes and economic problems plaguing them. Including the worldwide recession of 2008, a severe earthquake and tsunami in 2011, and the COVID-19 pandemic and recession. 2000s in economics, wikipedia.org. The United States and many other high economy countries faced a similar threat at the turn of the century. I'm just trying to figure out if you can hear that. That is so loud. I mean, it's there, but it's quiet. The United States. The decade after the turn of the century was tumultuous and saw no economic gains for the average American. Scandals rocked the oil and energy industry and investments and, and investments, resulting in the collapse of the housing market, and fear spread throughout the world after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. This decade contained two major recessions. The first came following the 9/11 attacks, when the stock market closed for 6 days, and then in the next 18 months, the Dow Jones average fell to 7,000. The stock market was already suffering due to the sharp downturn of dot-com shares, aka the dot-com crash of the late 1990s into early 2000s. With only a few notable exceptions, such as Google, surviving the fallout. The bailout of the housing market. In 2007 to 2008, just when the economy started showing signs of significant recovery, the housing market collapsed, spiraling the value of real estate downward. Mortgage-backed securities imploded because of the bundling of high-risk mortgages into what looked to be safe investment opportunities. This affected the entire mortgage industry, and many companies were in danger of insolvency. In response to this economic crisis, Congress passed the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008, which in turn created the Troubled Asset Relief Program, allowing the Department of the Treasury to buy toxic assets from companies who could then buy safer assets to replenish their incomes, and to buy up bank shares in order to provide capital needed by financial institutions, and to buy up bank shares in order to provide capital needed by financial institutions to stay afloat. Eventually, the Treasury Department was able to sell back the Treasury Department was able to sell back those shares for an overall gain of about $30.5 billion. Fannie Mae, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac government-sponsored home ownership programs were forced into conservatorship and had to be bailed out by the Treasury Department which bought senior preferred stocks in both entities. This too resulted in significant dividends paid back to the government. 2000s in economic, wikipedia.org. Wikipedia. Bear Stearns had to be saved from the collapse, as the Federal Reserve deemed it too big to fail. Its collapse would pose a deep-rooted risk to the stock market and provided about $40 billion in bridge loans and the purchase of Bear Stearns financial assets to keep the company afloat so that J.P. Morgan Chase could eventually buy out Bear Stearns assets. The American International Group, AIG, the fifth largest insurer in the world, was given $141.8 billion. In assistance, and in return received 92% ownership of AIG, and in return received 92% ownership of AIG. 2010s are the low interest rates too low? Are the low interest rates too low? Are the low interest rates too low? Too low. In the past decade, the economy has seen incredibly low interest rates. The natural rate of interest has been in steady decline, which has a positive and a negative effect. On the positive side, borrowing costs have been reduced so significantly that living standards have increased. On the other hand, the ordinary increase of interest rates is an indicator of strong and stable economy, and is the tool that the Federal Reserve uses to combat recession. What the fuck was that? It was like a scratch on the tape. My lips are falling apart. With an interest rate hovering between 2% and 3% during the 2010s and perhaps beyond, the Federal Reserve has little room for lowering the rate The Federal Reserve has little room. The Federal Reserve has little room for lowering the rate in the case of a major recession. What was the big story in economics over the last decade? Brookings. The post-financial crises have resulted in increased income inequality. The post-financial crises have resulted in increased income inequality, i.e., the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. The economic recoveries of the 2010s haven't been used wisely. Infrastructure and public investments, or the reduction of the national debt, are largely unattended. The public outcry against this economic inequality has been fueled by the increase of available information. The poor are beginning to feel their reduced opportunities and mobility. And in fact, a reduction in life expectancy as deaths by overdoses, alcoholism, and suicide have increased in working age Americans. 2020 to 2021, the COVID epidemic. The COVID-19 pandemic created a global epidemic upheaval unlike any other, lasting for roughly 3 years. For the United States, the pandemic resulted in the biggest government bailout in history, as severe economic contractions drove the government to send stimulus checks. To individual citizens and businesses, and initiated paycheck protection programs and increases in the weekly unemployment pay rates. Davis. This bailout will be paid for by taxpayers of the future. With our population in decline, the number of taxpayers may not be sufficient. The number of taxpayers may not be sufficient to support the weight of this burden. Gosh darn, freaking 58 minutes of recorded material. I just shit you not, it'll be 15 minutes. It'll be 15 minutes at the end of the day. I'll boil that down to 15 minutes. It's crazy. It's crazy how much an hour is worth 15 minutes. It's crazy because, you'll record... Hold up, let me expand this a bit. You'll literally record for, You will record... Yeah, the glasses, they're up. I hate the way that they make this feel right here. I just do not like that feeling, so I'll put them up like this. Looks pretty crazy, but whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, literally, you'll record for an hour. You'll get the juice isn't worth the squeeze because you'll get a fourth of what you've recovered. You'll recover a fourth of what you've recorded in the final clip, in the final recording. So you'll get like a fourth of that. And then, like, not to mention to go through and, okay, I'm thinking about this earlier. When I was looking at about 45 minutes of material, I boiled that down. I did like the retakes and the spacing. I'll do that in maybe like, I'd say somewhere between like 15 to 20 minutes it'll take me to get through like 45 minutes of repeated words and spacing. So somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes, maybe even upwards of 30 to be honest. So we got about, I'm trying to compare my timing to earlier. So 45 minutes of material plus, because me recording takes about that long. Plus, about, let's go upwards of 30 to edit that down. That's about 75, so about an hour already. And then to do the timing will take at least an hour. It'll take at least an hour for that 15-minute chunk. So that is 135 minutes per 15-minute chunk. That is a factor of 9. So, like, to be safe, you can do a factor of 10 on anything you do. So if something will, for example, take 4 hours, no, it won't. You multiply that by 10, it'll take 40 hours. It'll take a work week to do. So, like, if you accept a project for 4 hours, if you're going quick, you can do it between 36 and 40 hours. So it'll take an entire work week to get through a 4-hour project. But on the bright side, what that means is if it's your full-time job, you can knock out a 4-hour project every week. If you're running double time, if you're doing 80 hours a week, you can knock out 2, or you can do a really long project. If you're like really burning the midnight oil, you can do it in that amount of time. The problem with these is like 4-hour project. I'm pretty sure this last one was a 4-hour project. Let's see, my projects. Oh, okay, so we got approval. We got approval from Mr. Michael Kelly. We got approval. He said, I've been reading the ACX best practices and notice books under 3 hours rarely get credit purchases. Can we adjust the pacing at words per minute and exclude all front back matter to maximize runtime? I can also provide additional content like the audio exclusive intro for the 3-hour limit, but I also have books 2 or 3 that we can add chapters and slightly extend, so we make maximum. Let's see, Michael. Let's see. I didn't mean to air out your dirty laundry there. But it's not really dirty laundry. He's just collaborating. That's all that is. But we have this project due on December 1st. So, looking at this, he's got a 2.2-hour book. What I can do is it's 20,000 words. We are about 20 minutes in. Let's see, the first 15 minutes was how many pages? That's a good question. The first 15 minutes were how many pages? Let's see. Wolf Almanac, where we left off, we were on page 22. Chapter 2 is on page 22. But if we go up, I think I stopped recording the 15 minutes around. Okay, it was around page 10. Yeah, it was around page 10. So, if this goes to, if we expand, and this is like a loose approximation, but if we expand, the first 15 minutes was 10 pages. This book is 100 pages. And so that would then mean that the finished product should be around 150 minutes. Divided by 60 is going to be 2.5 hours. So, I mean, it's possible. It's possible. It's possible to do that. I'm trying to like address his commentary as thoroughly as possible, but we're about 22 pages in, and like I said, that it looked to be around another 15 minutes, and so that's like 30 minutes ish, except it's even longer than this thing. So it's 58, and then this is about 2. So that was about 60 minutes. So 60 minutes. This was 50 for the 48. So if 48 plus 2, if that's 50, so 50 minutes, if that became 15, then multiply that by 60, and that would be 200. Or no, sorry. 200 divided by 60? If 50... No. 15 over 50, that would be 0.3. So 0.3 multiplied by 60 is 18 minutes. So 18 plus 15 would be about 27. No. It's 32. I can do math. Kind of. It's probably 33. It's 33. It's 33. So 15 plus 18. 33. That's chapter 2. 33 minutes in 22 pages is 1.5 minutes per page. Multiply by 100. We're still on track for 150 minutes. Divided by 60 is 2.5 hours. Yeah. So that's further evidence if I apply it to that, which, you know what? That's not further evidence. It would be further evidence if I distilled that down and it became... That was just circular logic, what I've done. It's important to keep your mind primed. Always do mathematics, because you never know when your mathematical mind might betray you one day. You might say, oh my gosh, I'm so good at math, and then you do a math problem in front of somebody and they're like, idiot, that is a hyperbolic assumption that you've done. I don't like the fact that the alert box doesn't really pop up here. Is it because it's just over to the side? How about this? There we go. Love to see it. Love to see it. Love to see it. All right, fantastic. Cool. Yeah, we gotta change the tip jar into something else, something more fun. We gotta turn that into like a microphone or something, or like a book that you put pages into. That'd be funny. That'd be a funny thing. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining the Red Room. I feel like I should like turn this a shade of red, because that's what I see when I look through here. I just see a bunch of red. Yeah, it looks really weird. Looks really weird without it. But yeah, thank you guys. Let's see. Thank you. Wait, let me type it. Okay, got it. Wait, that's just Twitch. What? What? Why am I just on the Twitch? Thank you. What if I got a message on Kick? What if I got a message on Kick? I wouldn't know. Hold up. Let me look up Kick chat room. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. No, we're good on Kick. We're good on Kick. I have 0 viewers on Kick. I got no swag on Kick. 0 swag on Kick. That's okay. How about YouTube? We good on YouTube? Let's go to YouTube. I freaking posted this. I thought that would... Alright, anyway. Okay. I don't see anybody having typed on YouTube. Alright, note to self, check what multi-stream chat you see, because I was not checking the right one. It's my bad, guys. It's my bad. But that's all I got for tonight. So I love you guys. I think we're slowly going to knock this out. We're 20% of the way through. We've only done a couple days worth of recording. So I think that's a good amount. We're also working our way towards the free legal foundations of a free society. That I'm probably going to be working during the week on. But this is a good weekend project because I love knocking these out in chunks. The legal foundations, I will try to do my best with chunks, but it's so freaking long that I literally don't think I could do it in chunks. And I think just doing it as much as I can during the week might be a better way to do that. So that's how I'm going to approach it. Yeah, that's all I got for tonight. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on the playback, I love you. I see you. I see you guys all the time when you guys are clicking on. I think the last one was up to 10-ish views or whatever, which at the current moment, that doesn't seem like an incredible amount, but that's 10 whole people that are clicking on it. And it's not me, I promise. I don't really touch that. So the only thing is I probably watch it once just to make sure audio sounds good. And what else? Yeah, and when I switch between scenes, everything looks seamless, stuff like that. So I'm just looking at technicalities for about a once over, and that's I don't really touch it after that. So appreciate you guys watching it on the playback. Thank you so much. Maybe we might make this into a video. Who knows? Who knows? But love you guys, and I hope to see you on the next one. See ya.
Luna, before you go, could we all sing a song together?
Oh, yes. We still have time for a song.
Well, you know my favorite song, Bear. Would you like to sing it?
Oh, yes, we'd love to.
Sí, me gustaría mucho. Hey, this was really fun.
We hope you liked it too.
Seems like we've just begun
When suddenly we're through.
Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye.
'Cause now it's time to go.
But hey, I say, well, that's okay.
'Cause we'll see you very soon, I know.
Very soon I know.
Oh, when we have to go away.
It's kind of sad, but then
It's nice to know
it won't be long.
Till we get